It's April the 23rd, and it's time for our Moravian reading, which is Mark 6, verses 7 to 13, Jesus sending out the 12.
The first thing that struck me about this passage was Jesus called the 12 to himself, and you imagine them gathering round him on a dusty hillside. It conjures up a picture a bit like a football manager getting the team together just before a big match. I can imagine Jurgen Klopp in the Liverpool dressing room saying, "Come on guys, this is a big event, you can do it." He inspired them, encouraged them. And so before we do anything in the kingdom for Jesus, we need to huddle with him and be encouraged. And the next thing you see is that he sent them out 2 by 2. And spreading the gospel is not a Lone Ranger activity. It's something we normally do as a team, and that's across within a church, but also across the kingdom as churches work together to share the good news of Jesus. And then he says to them, take nothing but a staff. And in the ancient kingdom, the staff was a symbol of leadership. It was what a shepherd would use when he was leading his sheep. And the staff was also used for hooking wayward sheep out of a ditch. This commission that he was giving them was actually a dummy run. It was a trial for what they were going to be doing after his death and resurrection, when he sent them out to evangelize the then known world. So he was telling them that they were going to be leaders and that they were going to be pastors. And this was a big preparation for the time to come. And then he tells them to take nothing, which, well, we're so used to being self-sufficient and relying on material things that what he was encouraging them to do was to rely on God. And when everything's stripped away, that's what we have to do. John and I have learned many times on our missions overseas that when things are stripped away, you have to trust God, and we've seen God always provide and sort things out for us. And so it builds your faith, and Jesus was building their faith ready for the time to come.
And the overall picture here is the disciples being sent on mission, which as always the New Testament defines as proclaiming good news and freeing the captives and bringing healing. And you know, at this time we need to focus on that, because we're still the bringers of good news to the world around us. We're still those who can deliver freedom, even if it's in simple ways like forgiving people or encouraging others to forgive those that have hurt them, and those that can bring healing. We can pray for people on Skype calls, and we can pray for people over the phone. There are 2 things that stand out to me in this passage, and things that stand out to me I've really got to explore to find out what they're about. And the first is in verse 9, don't wear 2 tunics. Now, who wears 2 tunics? The writers of all the commentaries don't really deal with this. I've only seen this happen once, and it's Scally's getting on an EasyJet flight in Liverpool because they don't want to pay for bags, and so they wear 2 sets of clothes. And Jesus is saying the same thing. Don't take bags, and don't wear 2 sets of clothes. And I think really reducing that, Jesus is saying the gospel has got to be lived simply. The gospel stands powerfully on its own. The seed is still good. You don't need to tart it up with all sorts of gizmos. The gospel stands powerfully. The second thing that stands out to me is dust off your feet when people reject you. Do you know, fear of rejection is the number one reason why us as the bride of Christ don't give testimony. Few of us are called to be evangelists, but we're all called to be witnesses. And yet the evidence is we don't witness because we're afraid of rejection. Here's the thing. Jesus is saying, even in my school of evangelism and mission training, people will reject you. And he was warning them for that rejection. And we need to be warned too, that of the people we speak to, many will reject us, but the wonderful thing is some won't. And we have to get through the rejection to get to those that God has prepared. And finally, I think the thing we want to say is that at this time, it's a time of preparation. The Holy Spirit's spoken to me recently saying, this is a time of preparation. And in this regard, maybe we need to be looking at those that we're involved in, those things we're involved in, and ask the Holy Spirit, is it time to press on and be faithful and diligent? Or is it time, maybe, to say, we need to call time on this one, move on? Because if we stick with things the Holy Spirit is not preparing for us, then we can't get to the things that he has prepared for us. So let's be in prayer at this time. It's a time of preparation, ready for when it ends, that we'll be more effective as his bride. Amen.